Well, like many Canadians, Neithu, some senators and MPs thought dropping dollar-for-dollar tariffs against the U.S. weakened Canada's negotiating position with the United States. President Donald Trump's tariffs are doing to his own economy.
We are confident that the domestic pressure from senators, governors, business leaders, union leaders in the United States will also create potentially an opportunity for us.
What if Canada became the 51st state of the United States? Not by invitation, but by force. It sounds absurd, almost like political satire. But that's exactly how millions of Canadians felt when President Donald Trump announced his latest wave of tariffs. A sweeping set of trade penalties targeting everything from lumber to farm machinery, even hinting at pharmaceuticals and automotive parts. The White House called it a move to restore fairness. Critics called it economic coercion. And for Canada, America's closest neighbor, top trading partner, and strategic ally, this wasn't just another trade dispute. It felt like a warning shot. Trump's tariffs, announced in late September and set to begin their first phase on October 14, 2025, with additional hikes rolling out on January 1, 2026, were framed as defense of American workers. But inside both countries, the reaction was instant and divided. American governors, labor unions, and business coalitions warned the White House that this time, the pain would be felt at home. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, Canada's leaders saw something very different. An opportunity, perhaps even the push they needed, to finally diversify away from American dependence. So tonight, we unpack how Trump's tariff gamble is backfiring, not just economically, but politically, creating the very independence movement he fears the most. Because what was meant to remind Canada who's boss might just make it stronger. Trump's Fair Trade Restoration Act, unveiled with little warning, slaps new import duties ranging between 25% and 100% on Canadian goods depending on the sector. The plan targets construction materials, furniture, farm equipment, processed food, and select medical products. But unlike the 2018 trade war, this one is more selective, more political. It zeroes in on the industries Trump has publicly blamed for undermining American jobs and outsourcing supply chains to Canada. Publicly, the president claimed that Canada was taking advantage of U.S. markets under the USMCA, and that new tariffs were temporary leverage to negotiate a better deal. Privately, Washington insiders told the Trade Compliance Resource Hub that the timing was anything but coincidental. With the 2026 elections approaching, Trump needed a populist rallying cry, something to reignite the same America First fire that helped him win before. And trade wars, for him, have always been more political than economic. Yet this time, the economics hit differently. Because Canada isn't the same trading partner it was in 2018. It's wealthier, more globally connected, and far less dependent on U.S. approval. The phrase, Canada becoming the 51st state, has echoed across talk shows, political panels, and even memes. But beneath the humor lies a deep unease. To many Canadians, Trump's trade tactics, from tariffs to verbal jabs, feel less like negotiation and more like control. An attempt to remind Canada that its prosperity still flows south of the border. But here's the irony. Every time Washington tightens its grip, Ottawa looks elsewhere. And every time Trump talks about dominance, Canadians talk more about sovereignty. This shift isn't theoretical, it's measurable. Polling from Global News found that a majority of Canadians now support trade diversification as a national priority, a complete reversal from a decade ago, when the U.S. was seen as an unshakable economic anchor. The 51st state joke is starting to sound less funny and more prophetic. Because Canada's defining itself not by alignment, but by independence. The tariffs aren't just numbers on a screen. They're already rewriting supply chains and livelihoods. Take Claas, the German agricultural giant that built its North American Lexion, 8,000 combine harvesters in Omaha, Nebraska. Facing new tariff exposure on imported components from Canada, the company announced it would shift a portion of its production back to Harswinkel, Germany, a move that could cost American jobs. Nebraska Public Media confirmed the relocation earlier this year, warning that hundreds of skilled workers may face reduced hours or transfers. Meanwhile, Canada's farm machinery sector, particularly in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, has quietly picked up those contracts. What Trump sold as a patriotic victory is, in reality, accelerating the migration of manufacturing away from the U.S. heartland. And it's not just machinery. The National Association of Home Builders warned that tariffs on Canadian lumber are already pushing home prices up across the Midwest and the South. NAHB data suggests every 10% increase in lumber costs adds roughly $14,000 to the average home price. That means Trump's tariffs, designed to protect American mills, are making it harder for American families to afford homes. Furniture retailers are also caught in the crossfire. From North Carolina to Michigan, small businesses report price jumps of 15 to 20% in imported wood and hardware. And then there's agriculture. Farmers who rely on Canadian fertilizers, seed technology, or cross-border distribution are watching costs surge while export markets shrink. In short, the tariffs that were supposed to save American jobs are quietly destroying them. This is where the story turns political, not in Ottawa, but in Washington. Within days of the tariff announcement, a coalition of U.S. governors from Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and even Texas signed a joint letter urging the White House to reconsider measures that harm domestic producers and consumers alike. Labor unions, historically loyal to Trump's protectionist rhetoric, are also breaking ranks. The United Auto Workers, AFL-CIO, and Teamsters Union have each released statements condemning the move, arguing it will erode export competitiveness and trigger retaliatory job losses. For many of these workers, the irony is bitter. They voted for tariffs in 2016, and now those tariffs are costing them their paychecks. Even conservative lawmakers are nervous. Republican senators from border states are privately warning that the new trade war could destabilize local economies that depend on cross-border logistics, energy, and agriculture. As one Midwest governor told Reuters off record, "We were promised fair trade. What we got was friendly fire." The revolt isn't ideological, it's practical. When American manufacturers lose contracts and when American consumers face higher prices, political loyalty disappears. Trump's tariffs were meant to unify his base. Instead, they've united his opponents. While the U.S. scrambles to contain political fallout, Canada is quietly executing Plan B. Ottawa is accelerating its comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Indonesia, a deal that will eliminate or reduce tariffs on over 95% of goods traded between the two countries. That's not a side deal. It's a signal. Canada is expanding its economic footprint deep into the Indo-Pacific, joining forces with partners from Singapore to Vietnam, while also deepening existing ties with the European Union through CETA. In defense, Canada's latest submarine procurement shortlist deliberately excludes any U.S. supplier. Instead, it's between Germany's ThyssenKrupp Type 2-12 CD and South Korea's KSS-3 designs. It's not just about who builds the submarines, it's about who Canada trusts. As Naval News reported, this marks a decisive break from decades of U.S.-aligned defense procurement. Ottawa no longer feels obliged to buy American, and politically, that independence is paying off. Dominic LeBlanc, Canada's Public Safety and Procurement Minister, recently told reporters that Ottawa was confident that balanced, rules-based trade relationships will outlast political cycles. Translation? Canada's playing the long game. Trump's trying to win headlines. The North American power dynamic is changing, not overnight, but unmistakably. Trump's tariffs are accelerating a process that's been years in the making. Canada's slow, deliberate diversification away from the United States. Ottawa's investment in electric vehicle supply chains, green tech, and semiconductor manufacturing isn't just about innovation, it's about independence. Every new trade deal, every procurement decision, every energy partnership that bypasses the U.S. is part of a pattern. Because Canada has learned something vital. Economic security isn't about proximity, it's about resilience. And as the United States turns inward, Canada's turning outward. What was once a one-way dependency is becoming a two-way negotiation. And for the first time in decades, Ottawa is holding the leverage. Let's end where we began, with the idea of Canada as the 51st state. It was supposed to be a joke. Now it's a warning. Trump's tariffs, meant to reassert control, are producing the opposite. A political revolt inside America and a strategic awakening inside Canada. The numbers tell the story. Canada trades roughly $2.4 billion every day with the United States. Over 70% of Canadian exports cross the border, but that share is shrinking. And the more Washington tries to weaponize trade, the faster Ottawa learns to live without it. In Saskatchewan, a farmer named Luke Henderson told CBC News, "We used to depend on the US for everything, markets, machinery, even fertilizer. Now we're finding other ways. It's not political, it's survival." And maybe that's the real story here, because in 2025, the question isn't whether Canada will become the 51st state. It's whether the United States is becoming the 51st problem, for its own allies, its own economy, and its own people. Trump's tariffs were supposed to protect America. Instead, they're isolating it. And in a world where trade defines power, isolation is the one tariff no country can afford. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell, and drop a comment. Do you think Trump's tariffs will strengthen or weaken America's global position? Your voice matters, and so does truth. See you in the next one.